Johen DeLeon, welcome to the Freetrail podcast again, buddy. Our favorite runner, man. That's I went back and watched the interview that we did at the Cirque Series A-Basin event, and it was like, this is the people's trail runner here, Johen DeLeon. So thanks for coming back on the show.
All-time moment.
All-time moment for all of us, man. It was so fun to get to know you then, and then we got to know you even better after the fact. We're going to talk about all that stuff here, including making some fun announcements around new partnerships and new beginnings for Johen as you tackle this great sport of trail running as one of its most exciting up-and-coming stars, who also happens to be one of the great personalities in the game. But first, Johen, we got to get started with my traditional opening question, which is just, what makes you you?
Yeah, I had some time to think about this one, but honestly, what makes me me is, besides like the personality and like what I'm really into, I think the fact that like past, present, and future, like I'm always going to be me, and if I've ever had the pleasure to like hang out or kick it with you, I probably asked you a trillion questions or talk your ear off, but it was all for the love, and hopefully, you had a good time just kicking it.
No doubt. No doubt, man. So I want to go back in time and talk a bit about your history. Obviously, even though we've done an interview together in the past, there's still a lot more that we can cover to help the audience understand a little bit more about your story. But before we do that, I want to start with something that I remember you and I talking about in Mammoth this past summer, that being the old heads in Gunnison and Crested Butte. Guys like Duncan Callahan, Timmy Parr, Josh Eberly. These are guys from my generation. In fact, some of my earliest inspirations in the sport too. So introduce the audience to the old heads and maybe how they've inspired you as this up-and-coming trail runner.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I first said the word old heads, I remember you cracking up and being like, old heads, And it's not necessarily people that are old, they're like, they just kind of been in the game, and they're like vets in the game. And, they've kind of laid the foundation down for like a lot of us. And, we got quite a bit of old heads like in the valley, and like for like Josh Eberly, Timmy Parr and Duncan Callahan, and they're like inspiring people because, to this day, like I'm pretty sure if you still hit up those guys, like they'll run at 6 a.m. every single day, and like they've just always been like really just disciplined people, and they were doing it before like there was any bread in trail running, what I'm saying? Like nowadays, like, there's a check that comes along with this sometimes, but, like people are out there running these 100-mile Leadville races with like there was no funding or anything involved, and they were just in it for like the love of the game, and we owe everything to those guys and the old heads in the trail running or just running game. So it's always a pleasure and a good time to kick it and like get to run with those guys whenever I get to. So they're just the best. They're just the best,
I love it, dude. And yes, I did laugh hysterically when you referred to the guys of my generation as the old heads. And for our listeners, yeah, you're right. There was no bread in the game back then, right?
Nothing, man.
Duncan Callahan's a 2-time Leadville champion. Tim Parr won Leadville. They've both had great careers now, family men as well. And yeah, they built the foundation for what your generation gets to enjoy. So
exactly.
Shout out to the old heads in the Gunnison Valley, including Duncan, Timmy, and Josh. So I went back and revisited the interview that we did together where Freetrail and the trail running universe fell in love with Johen DeLeon. That was at Cirque Series A-Basin back in September. And I want to spend a bunch more time here on your personal story just to set some foundation for the audience and because I'm personally curious. And back in that interview, you mentioned summer track in Waco, Texas, and that your parents were working, so they would just drop you off at the track. And that's where you discovered this amazing passion and talent for running. So paint the picture, like what is summer track?
Yeah. So like through the like City of Waco Parks and Recreation, they put on summer track like in the summertime. And it's really sick because like your coaches growing up are like Baylor University track athletes, you know. It was like a thing for like the athletes to like basically make some money over the summer and kind of like pay it forward, you know, in a way. And no matter what sport you did, like throughout the year, you know, you played baseball, football, like soccer, whatever, like more than likely your parents dropped you off for summer track, you know. And it was crazy times, you know, because it's like summer, you know, it's like 5 o'clock, so it's like triple digit heat, you know. You get there and you're like smelling burnt rubber, you know, and then you're just like, my soul's about to be poured out on this track, you know. And then and you know, it was a really sweet thing because you get to like you know, from a young age, like role models and like who you are around is like such a big thing, especially like growing up in the urban city of Waco, you know. So it's like, you know, you get to see people that have kind of like already kind of lived your young life and they've made it to Quarter Mile U, you know, at Baylor University. And so it was a really awesome thing. And I did that from like 6 years old all the way to like essentially when I got to high school, you know. And so it was a thing, like, you know, you do it and you go, there's like regionals, you go to state, you know, states like in McAllen, Texas, usually, which is even hotter like than Waco, you know. It's like straight valley town. And but it was a really awesome thing because like you saw the community kind of like be one, you know, and all just cheer out, you know, cheer for their kids. And you know, you're essentially just like another sport to hang out with the homies, you know, and keep yourself busy. But
was it clear in those early days that you had a talent and an ambition to chase this sport in a serious way?
My mama always told me, she was like, because my mom she ran cross country and track when she was like in high school and stuff. So she was like, you know, it's in your blood, you know, it's in your blood to run. And it's like, and think about like all my homies and friends were all like sprinters or like high jumpers, you know. There was no like, I was probably one of one distance kids that was like always, you know, in my friend group, you know. So I always was like, it was a rare thing for someone to do that, you know. And so my mom was just always pretty encouraging, and I had like some of the best, like I had the best coach ever. Like my coach at the time for a while, his name is James Gilreath. He actually was like the school record holder at Baylor and ran for Adidas a while like after. So like really awesome person just to learn from and kind of like engrave that discipline, you know, at a young age, you know, because it goes such a long way, you know, those little like skills, things. But definitely awesome. Like when I got to high school, I was like, I'm so over the summer track stuff. Like, you know, it's like so hot. Like I'd rather go swim or something, you know, and go play basketball inside, you know, like. But I'm very thankful for summer track.
But you were I mean, at least from what I can deduce, you were a bit of a phenom in those days. So maybe we'll come back and talk about that. But
yeah,
you've referenced it here. You've also referenced it. Yeah, oh, of course. So anyway, you referenced here, and you also referenced in the interview that we did at A-Basin that you're from the inner city. And I remember you told me when we were hanging out that like your whole family or a big portion of your extended family almost lived on the same block in Waco. Yeah. And you said like, I think you said something like, you know, you've got cousins or aunts and uncles that have never even left Waco, and that your family is obviously really tight, which I want to come back and talk about in a second. But by your description, it feels like super humble beginnings. So I'd love to have you share a little bit about that and in what ways that upbringing shaped you.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like, I lived on Holman Avenue in North Waco, and I essentially lived in like a house, and then my neighbor next to me was my grandma, and then my neighbor next to my grandma was my great grandma, you know. So like we had like essentially all our family on one, you know, block area. And so I never really like, that was my own like little oasis, you know, like a lot of my life was just spent on that one little area, you know, roaming around the neighborhood with my cousins and stuff. And, and a lot of my family really kind of, it's like the nest, you know, like a lot of people don't really leave the nest, you know, so it's a really big thing. It's a huge thing that I'm like another state away, you know, like, and even just like leaving, like a lot of my family doesn't even really leave Central Texas, you know, or even like rare to get out of the state, you know. So anytime I always go somewhere, I like send them pictures, like FaceTime, talk to them and show them new places. Cause it's such kind of it's kind of crazy thinking about that it's such a rare thing, but but I wouldn't change anything about it growing up,
What's that like though, to spend the vast majority of your childhood kind of living on the same block as, a lot of your extended family, it seems like, and it feels like in some ways has to rub off on you or shape you in some way.
Yeah. Well, like that's just kind of the world. That's what I thought what the world is, And then, I was always a very like curious person, like my mom would get off work, and we would like, instead of me hanging around the neighborhood or whatever, we would go to the library, and I would like read a bunch. And that was me kind of learning about like what was out there, you don't really just being a curious kid, and then, and as you get older, like obviously I started to get better at running, and then had a good coach in high school and stuff. And, doors start opening and people start throwing out the like idea of you maybe going to college to run or like getting out, and stuff, cause that was my one, like when I got older, like that was my one rule that my parents had. They were like, you can go to whatever school you want, but you can't go to Baylor or like stay in Waco. Like that's our one rule, like you need to go somewhere else besides this, like, but it shaped me to like just being very like, I don't know, just being very grateful and then like being very thankful for everything, anytime I get to go to like a new place or, or get to see new things, like I'm always just so in the moment, so present about it, cause I know like, I mean, people don't realize that it's such a rarity for me to like even, be here, and kind of just like witness,
Yeah.
So like when I went to, no, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think that's what made you so endearing when we did our first interview, is just like that you did feel so present and so genuine in your enthusiasm and your appreciation for just the opportunity to run that Cirque Series race, the opportunity to go toe to toe with Patrick Kipngeno, and then the opportunity to just come sit and have a public conversation with us. And it rubbed off on all of us. And of course we became instant friends and instant fans at the same time.
Yeah. Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
So coming back to what you were just mentioning with college, you went to Texas State and you shared in our Cirque interview that without running, college probably wasn't going to be an option for you, and that the scholarship sort of opened this important opportunity to get an education to compete as a student athlete at Texas State. Say more about that, or just say more about just the gift of being given an opportunity.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, when I was like a sophomore in high school, because essentially I was always just doing it, like running just for the, like, I mean, I still do it for the same reasons, just like for the love of it, and like get to be around really cool people, and just get to know them. And so when I was like 15, it started to get to the point where I was like progressing and probably should take it a little bit more seriously, and then I met Chris Schrader, who ended up becoming my like private coach, you could say. And he was like, the first time I ever met him, he looked at me and he was like, "You're built like a bloody greyhound." He's an Australian dude. So he's like, "You built like a greyhound." And he's like, "We're going to get you a scholarship, like you got to work hard, So I was like, man, that's the first time I've ever heard that, what I'm saying? Like a scholarship, and then kind of like made a decision to really just like stop doing other sports, cause it's a lot different when you're doing something for the love of it. And then when people start really kind of like believing in you to start doing certain things, and like that for me was like, when my like parents were like starting to like invest some more of their time, to make sure I was like doing well and they wanted to see me achieve, greatness, whatever in the sport. Like that's when I really was like, okay, this is something that's like going to propel us and like build bridges for us, Yeah. So then, like really just grinded it out, had very good success in high school, and then, then we ended up going to college, and then, getting after it for, in that area too, so, and so, definitely like, I definitely started using like running as more of like a vision quest, you know, for like helping me in life, you know, once I realized what the capabilities of it, you know, something simple as like running can take you, you know.
Yeah.
Because like if you had told me when I was a young kid, like running around barefoot with my cousins, like, oh, if you keep running, you know, like you're gonna go see some cool stuff and get to go see all this stuff. Like I would probably be like, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, one of the places running has taken you is you now live in the Gunnison Crested Butte area. We talked about the old heads, but there's also this exciting young crop that either lives there or has recently lived there, you among them. But in addition to you, like Cade Michael, Taylor Stack, Cole Campbell, Jeshrin Small, my boy Bosch Walio.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
maybe, yeah. So just maybe walk us through, you know, obviously the Western States Mountain Sport Program, I think, has been instrumental in building this pipeline of great athletes that has come out of it. I know you don't have, I think, direct exposure to that, but at least in some way have been influenced by it or have been touched by it. So just share a little bit about that young crop that's made its way through the Gunnison Crested Butte area and how it's inspired you.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, there's always like Gunnison is such a unique place for like people that just train in general, because it's like it's the same elevation as like a Flagstaff, you know, or like some other 7,000 foot like, you know, town. But the difference is like the weather and like what everything like what was just brought to the table when it comes to training in like the Gunnison Valley. You know, it's like one of the coldest places like in North America, you know, and so you get a lot of like, you know, and like I said, you have a lot of old heads that have just been around, they're still around, you know, and they like, there's just so much toughness and kind of like, you know, if you can grind out a winter in Gunnison and really stick it through and then do what you're supposed to do, then in the summertime, like it's all breezy, you know what I'm saying? You like, so
it's paradise.
It's paradise. Yeah. Cause in the valley, it's just paradise in the summer, but like wintertime, it's just really long. It's like unmerciful, you know, it's kind of brutal, but people still are out there like doing their thing. You know, they have goals to accomplish and like, you know, when I first moved to the valley, like, Cade was on the Western cross country team. And so I was pretty cashed out on like running because I had been doing it for so long and really just dialed into the track. But, you know, those guys and just running around the community are just like, it was such an inspiring thing, you know, and, you know, them getting after it and like the thing is it's a cool place to like lay low. Like a lot of people like lay low and grind and then you don't really hear about them until like the summertime and they ball out in the race and you're like, oh, where's so-and-so been? And it's like, dude, like, they've been out here putting in work, you know, you just haven't really seen it.
It's so true. It's not the Flagstaff or the Boulder where it's probably a lot harder to lay low, especially if you're really grinding it out. You know, there's such a big community of athletes there. Word does get around so that if there is some local hero, he or she is discovered immediately. But in Gunnison, you can lay low.
You can lay low, man. You know, and like I remember when Jesh, the year that he got like 5th at OCC's or something, like in the wintertime, like he was here in the valley and he was really putting in work, you know. And I remember like being a part of that process a little bit, like, you know, hitting runs with them and stuff. And I was like, dude, like no one knows this, but like this summer, man, you're about to turn some heads, you know. So it was really awesome, like things like that, like seeing people really just like seeing the result. I mean, you see it firsthand, you know.
Yeah. Say more about Jesh specifically, because he has like carved out a bit of a career for himself now, and I'm sure you being able to observe him in those days when you guys are sort of training together and grinding it out maybe opens your eyes a little bit about what the opportunities are in trail and maybe helped you to discover some of the talent that you possess as a trail specific athlete, even though you grew up as a track kid.
Yeah, well, like Jess was like the first person that I saw that kind of like that was just doing it for a living, you know what I mean, kind of situation. And I didn't really know much about like the trail or just even like what Adidas Teryx was, you know. Like I always knew what Adidas was, I didn't know what Adidas Teryx was, you know, and I didn't know it was like a whole different thing and trail thing. And But when I started to like run more with Jesh, like I was understanding, more about what was going on in the sport, and then seeing like firsthand, someone kind of like literally my age, and then trying to make his way to, because like I remember one of the first trail races that I ever did was the Moab like trail marathon, which is where like USA's is,
Yep.
and Jesh like didn't even really know him like that much, but at this time, but he like invited me to like go within the Moab and then run the race and then like kind of crash them for the time being. And then I remember like experiencing that whole thing and, going to Airbnb and like some of Jesh's like old trail running homies that were on the Western Trail team were there, and him talking about like getting content, but also like, just the importance of like, the race, and us just asking him a trillion questions and learning more about it. And I was like, dude, this is sick. Like, this man's out here racing, running for Adidas. He has the homies posted up at the Airbnb, we're all just like talking, and I was like, this is like, this might be kind of a path that I kind of want to, start pursuing, cause I just genuinely didn't know it was a thing, and
awesome.
that was a pretty surreal moment, cause it isn't, I only need to see something one time to be like, okay, I think I want to be at that level. You know what I'm saying? So,
hell yes. Okay. It's a perfect transition to talk about last year and sort of getting to observe where the level's at. So after Cirque Series A-Basin in September, where you finished just behind Patrick Kipngeno, only 45 seconds back of the world champ, you beat people like Philemon Kiriago, Cam Smith, Joe Gray, Adrian McDonald, Jeff Colt, Debo. Anyway, we spontaneously in the post-race interview said like, hey, if you can get off work and we can fund your trip, would you come to the Headlands 27K and the Mammoth Trail Fest? So maybe share first a bit about the conversation you had with your boss, Meg, from the Brettery, to just like present what must have been sort of like a surreal conversation to her about asking for time off so you could come do some races.
Yeah, well, I like, first off, I like never take off work, I swear. Like I'm always just like pretty dialed in for the season, and then and the thing about it was, I think a lot of people thought that I was in this position where Meg like wouldn't let me off, but as soon as like she was just like, dude, like this is what you do, like, like that's important to you, like I'm all full support. You don't have to worry about, and like a lot of the Brettery crew just like, they like rallied around it and they were just like I said, cause I always kept the running thing on the low. Like I never really told anyone I was out there. People have seen me pretty remote, like in the wilderness, like running just by myself, but they've never really knew that I was kind of on the grind like that,
Yeah.
And then that happened, and then people were like, oh shit, like this is crazy, you finished behind like a world champion, like, go run, don't like go worry about work, so it was a pretty chill conversation. She was so supportive about it, and I think that was what's really awesome, when you have like friends and family, like show their support with you in that way. It's just like it's a pretty like awesome feeling, Yeah. Obviously the pressure kind of gets there, because you're like, dang, I got to go to these races and, do this stuff. But I was very thankful for it. It was so awesome. It was an awesome moment.
So let's come back and talk about the races here in a second. But while we're on the Brettery, I think the audience would be interested to hear you just talk about the day-to-day of working at what is, I think, a local institution in the Crested Butte area in terms of a place for the local community and the tourist population to go and sustain themselves with delicious food. So, and I know as a bread baker yourself, a lot of those shifts usually start in the middle of the night. So maybe give us a sense of your day-to-day working as a baker there at the Brettery.
Yeah. So in the summertime, I was baking a lot because I just like being outside or being just at the Brettery in the daytime is like such an all-time thing. Like you look out and there's just like, you people watch, and then it's just really beautiful. In the wintertime, it's a little different because I don't bake as much, but I work more of the night shift, so like service starts at 5. like I get to work at 4, you know? So like my day to day, like in the wintertime is like, I basically get up in the morning and then I either go, depending on what the running schedule looks like, I either go ski first and then run, and then or I run and then like go do a workout, then I go ski, and then I literally like go immediately to work, you know. Then I work from like 4 to like 10 or something like that, you know, and then just do that kind of over and over and over again, you know. So
you're not pulling the overnight graveyard sourdough pastry shift.
No. In the summertime, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that early grind, you know, baker schedule. But you know, like
not so
in
much
the wintertime. Yeah, in the wintertime, I kind of prefer the night because I get to, you know, you can't go. I mean, I guess you can go ski at night, but I'd rather go, you know, have the mornings to myself, you know.
Understood. All right, so coming back to what happened after Cirque Series A-Basin, again, we did like a quick little GoFundMe and immediately shout out the Freetrail community stepped up. We raised some funds. God bless y'all. We got Johen out to California to take on the Headlands 27K and the Mammoth Trail Fest on back-to-back weekends, both part of the Golden Trail World Series last season. Before we get to that, though, say a few words about Kim and Topher, because Harmony and I were out of town at the time, so we were orchestrating getting you out here, but then we needed to like get you taken care of while you were here, and Kim and Toph opened up their doors. Our listeners, I'm sure a vast majority of them will be familiar with who Kim and Topher are, the significance that they have in the community, and they took you in, and it sounds like they showed you a good time while you were here.
Yeah. If you don't know them, like you need to know them because they're just really, they're some of the best people I've ever met in my life, you know, and it's crazy because like the more I like talk to them and was just hanging out with them, the more I was realizing like how big of legends they actually like are, you know, like I was like, they would lay some stuff on me like that they've done or like people they were really close friends with, and I'm like, what, you know, like, what do you mean you're cool with them? You know, they're like, oh yeah, right. Like, I was in their wedding or something like that, you know, and I was like, this is insane, you know, but Kim and Topher, like, yeah, I'm very thankful. I'm so happy to meet them. You know, they let me crash at their place for a few days. Like, and they really showed me like just really what the Bay like area, you know, had to offer, you know, and like show me really cool areas. And, especially like Topher being like born and raised in the Bay, and him being, like a big part of huge, like brands, you know, and making huge impacts. Like it was such a cool thing to hang around him. And then Kim being like this crazy humbled elite skier, you know, I was just like, this is crazy, you know, like, You guys are so cool, you know.
Yeah.
I can hang out with them in their backyard for like just days, just talking to them, telling them to tell me stories about their life.
Absolute legends, both of them, and dear friends of Harmony and I as well. And it was great that they were so welcoming to you because we were out of town, as I said, and sort of helped support you in the Headlands race. Took you to SFRC, get you some shoes and nutrition and stuff. So shout out to the Gaylord. So the races themselves, we don't need to like spend a ton of time. What I'd love to hear you talk about, because they didn't go perfectly. I think you were kind of sick too from the rough travel and stuff, but you battled it out against the best in the world. So maybe just share a little bit about what that experience did in terms of just opening your eyes to where the sport is at and what the opportunities were that existed within it.
Yeah, heck yeah. It was super cool, like seeing just how big, you know, like, especially like in Mammoth, you know, there was like, is it called like Euro TV or something like, they like
Eurosport, I think is what they used.
Eurosport. Yeah. So it was crazy seeing like how big of a sport, like it was at that level. It was also like just really awesome seeing like, cause like with the A-Basin, it was super sweet. Cause I had like really worked hard and really just grinded out and built this fitness that I really just wanted to prove to myself that I was kind of ready, you know, to compete at a higher level, you know, and really wanted to show out. So at the A-Basin, I got to see the standard in a way, you know, But then when I got to the Golden Trail Series races, it was like, truly like the highest of standard when it comes to the sub ultra, and I think that was what I just dreamed of seeing. Like I wanted to see like, some of these folks in the flesh, then really see what they had to bring to the table, and like kind of, and then like, even if I like got my butt kicked, but it was just a really wonderful opportunity to kind of like see what I needed to work towards, you know, and like, like the Mammoth, the Headlands race was unique in its own way because it was like really brutal and hard, but it was also super fast at the same time. Like you needed certain like skills, to perform really, really well. And you saw that like in the results of like who performed really high, and then when you went to Mammoth, it was a different story because it was like a higher elevation situation. And, then you saw like a different area of people, like a different group of people, perform really well. But, it was just such a, I like got back with sickness when I was in like Mammoth, and it was really such a bummer, because I was really stoked to run at like an elevation race.
Yeah.
But in a way though, like, my favorite other race was like the Headlands race because it was so just like raw, like, like with Mammoth, there was so much like coverage and, like Golden Trail Series type coverage of what was going on. But in the Mammoth race, it was like super sick because you were just truly like in the element of the Bay Area, like you went through like the fog and then the coast was right there. Like, and then, you saw like true locals, like in the race, like that were like San Francisco locals. And even though there wasn't as much coverage, like a lot of the people that were watching you in the race were truly just like in the moment, in the element, like cheering you on. And I was just a really big fan of that and experiencing that whole area. Cause dude, like, I think like, San Francisco was such a super sweet place, and getting to like, just see different parts of it was like a super surreal and awesome thing.
Yeah. I remember you and I talking after Mammoth Trail Fest, and you said something like, it's just good to see where the level is. And we did definitely throw you in the deepest of deep ends on the Golden Trail World Series, and you held your own admirably in less than perfect circumstances. Before we move to the big news and your new partnership, I'd love to have you just share a bit more coming back to your family, because one of the fun things about our participation in your, adventure here in California was just the inbound messages and comments that we got from your extended family, who all use the hashtag Run Jojo Run. So I'd love to just have you just share a little bit more about that, because they would identify themselves as like, oh, I'm Johen's great aunt, or I'm like Johen's second cousin or something. My point is that there was a lot of people behind you, and it felt like, there's an interesting and potentially special camaraderie that exists within your extended family.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, I'm so blessed to have like, the wonderful family that I have, and there's just like, I have a huge family, like, and like, but they've all kind of seen, they've all been a part of me or just see me running, since it was at the bottom level, and so I know that like they're super stoked to see me like progress to this point, because they've all, even though I have so many family members, they've all really like been a part of the journey, and it's just super. They just love to see me kind of just doing my thing, and I wish I could take all of them with me when I go to new places and stuff like that. But I know they're just as stoked to, watch online or watch on TV and really support. Sorry about that, dude. They really know how to blow up the comments. You know what I'm saying? They know how to like, everybody in my family they always have to say something,
Run, Jojo, run.
Yeah, heck yeah. That's crazy. That's been a thing since I was like 10 years old. They've been saying that. It's kind of funny.
That's so good, buddy. All right. So let's talk about the big news, man. It's so cool. I got a text from Logan Williams, who's the athlete manager at Satisfy. It was probably like 2 months ago at this point. I actually pulled it up here. And what it says is, Dylan, hope all is well. I'm reaching out because I came across an interview you did with Johen DeLeon and was wondering if you had his contact. I would love to give him an offer to run for Satisfy on a pro contract. Seems like a rad guy. To which I put it, screen capped it, texted it to you. I responded to Logan like, oh, this is such a brilliant idea. Intro coming. And of course, Harmony and I were grinning ear to ear as I am now, just recounting it. So maybe give the listeners a sense of how this partnership with Satisfy came together from your perspective.
Yeah. So obviously, like you had got, like you were told about it, then you kind of relayed the message to me, and then I was like, when I first heard about it, I was like, damn, I was like, what? It's pretty, there's no way, and then I got in contact with Logan because he wanted to talk to me like the next day, or the day after that, and he was really, really cool, like talking to him and hearing like about the pro team and really like what their goals were and kind of what they were aiming towards, and just as a brand and stuff. And I thought that was like the coolest thing, hearing their perspective on what they thought about the whole scene of trail running and running. And but I was told like Friday, I was so busy with just doing stuff, like I was like skiing, running, working, so I honestly didn't think about it till like Monday when I had the day off, and then I was like thinking about it. I was like, what? I was like, wait, that happened? That's crazy. That's freaking happened, and then and so it was all like hitting me at one time, and I don't like talking about myself, so I kind of kept it on the low for my family for like a week or two, and then finally called them and was like, yo, I have some news to share to y'all, it's, and then they were just freaking out, they were going crazy.
Yeah.
Had to call all the grandmas, all the moms.
Yes. I mean, it's such a perfect brand fit. I said to Harmony afterwards, I'm actually kind of pissed off that it wasn't my idea, because for our listeners who are only listening to this, not watching it, you've got the Satisfy hoodie on now, the beanie, and it looks supernatural on you. And of course, Satisfy is known because of just the attitude and the vibe that they bring to the sport, and you were just such a perfect fit for Satisfy's whole ethos. And so of course we were just so thrilled to see it come together too. One thing that I talked to Logan about that is kind of interesting, that it may be fun for you to comment on here, is that Satisfy explicitly does not have racing requirements in the contracts of their athletes, which makes sense, right? A lot of their athletes are almost more like artists in the way that they approach the sport and the way that they influence the sport. And I think you're an interesting cross-section. Obviously, we just said you've got the vibe and whatever, but also you're a fantastic athlete. And of course, you do have racing goals that we can talk about in a little bit. But it is an interesting orientation for a brand to take to an athlete team. So maybe you could shine a little bit more light on how Satisfy thinks of athlete partnerships and maybe how it's different from how other brands do.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was definitely a shocker when I was kind of told they weren't really a performance, based type brand, and so, cause I think with or without a sponsor or whatever, I would still have the same goals that I had this for 2025, racing or just FKTs and stuff like that. And but I also thought that was I really thought about it and had time just to really write about it and reflect on it, and it was really cool because you have say other brands, big companies, they design product and want to bring out stuff that's more of truly performance based, they want their athletes, say breaking records or and competing at the high level. But then you have someone a brand like Satisfy that's kind of taking on this different approach, because it's a weird time, running is really blending in to the everyday lifestyle of just the average person, and I think that's such a wonderful thing, it's cool. It's cool seeing people kind of take more time and in depth of what they're choosing to essentially wear, and rock, when they're pulling out to a running function or a race and something like that, So, I, was really like, kind of just like, okay, cool. Like, but I'm also like very grateful because it's a cool opportunity to kind of like show off with this brand, like, and represent at a high level and kind of see, that like Satisfy has some cool stuff that someone's wearing, and performing well in a big race. So, it's like, it wasn't, so I'm still kind of really thinking about like, more about the brand and learning more about it. 'Cause it's super cool to think about like what they're doing and like, and just the product they're releasing and, the reason behind it, and they're very transparent behind it, so yeah. And,
you just said that you wrote about it to reflect on it. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. I didn't know that about you. Are you like a journaler, or do you write stuff down to help yourself process certain decisions you're wrestling with?
Yeah. So I think that like whenever I kind of take, like I said, I'm always just really like in the moment and present a lot of times, and so I like have been really bad about like reflecting and kind of just processing things. And I feel like the only way for me to really do like really truly process certain things that I really need to think about is like taking like, like 30 minutes to an hour of the day to really like, write about it and really kind of just like spill out all this information that's coming out of my brain and kind of lock in and then, and just keep going, until I'm done writing. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, heck yeah. I mean, it's a unique skill. Plus, like, got to work on that cursive, Can't be losing those skills. Can't be losing those writing skills.
You just simulated the writing action with your left hand. Are you a lefty?
Yeah, I'm a lefty, man.
My God, it makes perfect sense. This is another reason why I love you so much. You may not know this, and my audience may not really understand this, but I have a huge thing about left-handed people, and all lefties are usually more artistic, more talented, more creative than us right-handed people. So it makes perfect sense that
the good lacrosse players.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember you telling me about that. You're like, man.
Okay,
like,
so we've already talked about this.
Yeah. I was like, if you're a lefty and you're a lacrosse player, like he's probably the guy.
It's so true. Yeah, every lacrosse team needs a good left-handed offensive player, maybe even a left-handed goalie. Usually creates like a little bit of a challenging dynamic for the offense of the opposing team. Same thing is true in hockey. You need to have great left-handed players on the ice. You're gonna, Tim Tollefson's a lefty in trail running. Francois Den's a lefty. So to our audience here, if you know other lefties in trail running aside from Tim Tollefson, Francois Den, and the great Johen DeLeon, throw them in the comments because we celebrate lefties here on the Freetrail podcast. So
yeah. That's awesome.
So coming back to Satisfy for a second, were you just in New Mexico? Has that already happened yet?
Yeah. So I was in Farmington, New Mexico, doing like a shoot and, with the group of people, working on some, like some release of some pictures and stuff like that for some product. And that was super, I had never really been to the Four Corners area before, like in my life,
Yeah.
And I've had this is out of the blue, but like I've had this crazy bucket list. There's a couple things I have on my bucket list, but like one of them was seeing wild horses. And, so I was like, dude, if I go to the Four Corners, I better see some wild horses. You know what I'm saying? And then, I was talking to Lila, who was like the producer of the whole thing. And she was like, no, you might see some, and, sure enough, I did, but it was a cool thing, like seeing some new landscape and, seeing some just new areas and seeing kind of like Pierre, who was there for doing the shooting and was like in charge of kind of the marketing thing.
Yeah.
It was interesting because obviously he's from France, but it's kind of funny how they have this like mad love for just like middle of America type aesthetic thing, like when we were in Farmington, New Mexico, I was like, so like, what made you want to come here? Cause I've never been here, I was told to, and he's like, oh man, like there's like shiprock, there's all this other stuff, and then, and I was like, all right, man, that's what, I'm here, I'm here to here to see the vision kind of play out, you know. So
so true. You know, they're like bring their Satisfy activations to at least a handful, I think, of the Aravaipa events that happen kind of in that Arizona desert area, Cocodona. I think they do have like an infatuation with American cowboy culture, things like
dude,
that.
I love
So
it.
you get
They're so, you know, and that's awesome though, because like, go for it.
Well, I was just going to ask you about, you know, the upcoming shoe release that they've got going on. If you've been able to see that or other things that may be fun from interacting with their team now that you're a newly minted athlete.
Yeah, man. So I got to rock the shoe in New Mexico. And I thought it was like, I thought it was super sick, you know, like it was cool. You could tell this, like, you know, one thing I love about like just those guys is like, you know, like whatever it is in life that you think is cool and that you want to pursue, it's cool. It's cool knowing that you're just like doubling down and this is what you think is cool. And like, we're all in on this, you know? And so like with some of the clothes and the shoes and stuff like that, I was like just asking like the reasoning behind a lot of things. And then it was even cool, like going on the website or like and reading the reasons behind certain parts of the shoe, you know, because I've always been fascinated with like the little details of like shoes or, you know, or clothes and stuff like that. So yeah, but I got to rock the shoe. It was really freaking awesome. I'm like super stoked. I'm super stoked about it. You know, hopefully you might catch me rocking that soon, though.
Yeah. Well, I still haven't even seen an image of it. I think they've been keeping everything super embargoed and
they're low key about it, man. Like for real, like, you know. I respect that in a way. You know, you got to keep the hype.
Yeah, totally.
You know.
Yeah, you know, Jean-Marc Dejean is an old friend of mine, and he's now the head of footwear at Satisfy. He's one of the best footwear guys in trail running history. So we're all very excited to see the finished product once it hits the market. But I'm glad you've had a chance to interact with it a little bit. I have to share a story with the audience here because I think it'll paint a picture of your personality, and hopefully people will feel even more endeared to you as a character in the sport. But Harmony and I talked to you, I don't know, what is it, a couple of weeks ago, once this whole Satisfy thing was official. And you were telling us about how Logan had told you to, you know, send him a list of all the product that you wanted off the website, and that you were like feeling really bad and conservative about how much, you know, product that you were sending him, feeling like, oh, this stuff's expensive. Like, I don't want to ask for too much. And Logan, of course, is like, no, man, you're an athlete for Satisfy. We want you to be wearing all of this product, and we want to style you out with all of it, irrespective of how much it costs. So anyway, I found that to be humorous and endearing.
Yeah. It was pretty, because my first method of like figuring out what I wanted was just like pressing add to cart, you know? So at the end of it, when I like was like, I went to the cart and I was like, oh, hell no, man. I didn't, you know, like, even though I didn't really like ask, I was like, this is kind of, you know, I don't want to be reaching. I'm not a greedy person, you know? So, then I hit him up and he was like, nah, man, you know? And that's when I asked you, I was like, yeah, man, like when you were with North Face, whatever, like, was there ever like did you ever feel bad for asking about certain things, you know? And so I was but it was pretty cool. I mean, they sent me some swag really quickly, so I was pretty stoked on it.
Yeah. Anyway, I think a lot of athletes do carry that same orientation of just like being grateful for the opportunity and don't want to overstep. But really, you know, this is about partnership, and the best way that you can deliver on the partnership is to always be representing. So you got to need a lot of product to be always representing. So
yeah, heck yeah. Also, so like John Mark, how do I get a hold of that guy? Because I'm trying to be in the same room hanging out with that guy, you know?
I'll put you guys together. Yeah, John Mark's a friend of mine.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, he's a legend, man. He's actually been on the show before. So shout out to John Mark.
Heck yeah.
One other thing that the audience might find fun, and maybe you can just expand on as we eventually begin starting to look ahead here. It sounds like you may go to Europe for the first time as part of Satisfy's activation at UTMB. I know you said to Harmony and I, you got to get a passport.
Dude, yeah, it's loading. It's loading.
Yeah, it's loading up. So, as we begin to start talking about the future, what are your plans now, like with racing and as it relates to this partnership, or you might be with Satisfy?
Yeah, so I have, like, obviously, like, I gotta get a passport, but hopefully hop in, like, some of like the bigger races, like in the summertime, like the Golden Trail Series races, and just, you know, get to compete again, you know, because I think that, like, it's like I was saying, you know, whether if I had a sponsor or not, I still had some, like, that competitive mindset was just really just like, I was just so dialed in on really getting a chance again to kind of compete against those guys again. So obviously the number one goal was just to not duck any smoke. I was just like, dude, like, I gotta show up again, you know, but this time I'll be ready. And so obviously there's like a USA team qualifier. So like Sunapee and then Broken Arrow.
Yep.
Obviously like big A goals. And then, just, you know, what's cool about like Satisfy is they kind of give me like a budget for, like big projects and chasing after like FKTs.
Cool.
So that's obviously like, I have some big mountain goals, you know, maybe in some other like, you know, international FKTs try to get after, but
nice.
Mostly just really trying to compete at a high level with in a lot of these big races.
Are you going to come to our races? I'm just remembering we talked about having you maybe come to the Big Alta and Gorge. I'm putting you on putting you on the spot here publicly, but we'd love to have you, dude. You got to come.
No. Yeah. So I'm coming to Big Alta, and the Gorge. And
are you registered yet? Are you registered?
I'm not. I need to work on that. But yeah, I mean, especially because, I mean, dude, like, you gotta understand, like, your oasis that you live in, like, and like where like the Big Alta is, it's like one of the coolest things, you know?
Yeah.
And then I went to the Pacific Northwest for the first time, like, last summer when I did the Hood to Coast. And so was just really, like, fell in love with, like, that whole area too, you know? And so, even if I'll be down to, like, just kick in and volunteer. I don't know. You need, like, you know, not even
whatever you want to do, buddy. We just want you to come hang out with us. So.
No, heck yeah, because it'd be cool. I mean, the Gorge race, that's like, congrats on, you know, getting that race to be like the 100K qualifier. That's like huge, man.
I mean, for an athlete like you too, I think you would just have a good time. If you ran the 30K the day before, then you could just kick it, drive around the course and watch the pros go after it for those Team USA qualifying spots at the 100K the following day. So it would be kind of a good opportunity to learn.
Yeah, that would be a movie to see. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely
that would be a movie, bro. That would be a movie.
Yeah, okay. Steven Spielberg.
All right. Well, Harmony and I will follow up after this to get everything organized, etc. But there's one more thing I wanted to get to before we wind down here today that you and I haven't talked about a lot, and that is your new coaching relationship with the Hemmings. When you were here in California for the Golden Trail World Series events, one of the things that we were talking about in the aftermath as part of the takeaway was that, you know, maybe you would benefit from some legit coaching. And now it seems like you're aligned with two of, you know, the hottest young stars in the sport, Eli and Tabor Hemmings. So tell me how that came together.
Yeah. So I was on a quest for a coach for like 2 years. And then, cause like, I feel like at every point in my life when I was like training for running and wanted to get to the next level, you know, if there was a certain goal that I want to accomplish, like, you know, there's always been like a Phil Jackson behind the scenes that's kind of like really helped me propel forward. And then I like really wanted to find just the right, and like the coaches that I've had were all like very like awesome people in my life, you know, and they were just wonderful on a coaching and a personal level. And so finding the right fit was like everything for me. And so I asked, like, even after, you know, when I was in California with you, I was asking you and Harmony, like, you know, who do you know? Like, you got like, I just need 5 people or 6 people that you think that would be good fits, you know?
Yeah.
And then really kind of just like, honestly, like was reaching out to people. And then, then just kind of forgot about it for a bit, and then was just kind of just laying low. And then the Hemmings actually like hit me up, and we're like, hey, like we heard that you were looking for a coach, you know, like we would love to like have, you know, talk to you and get, you know, maybe just have a phone call, you know. And then called them and was just really like, just fell in love with like, you know, their philosophy and just, you know, and who they were as people, you know, like they don't live in like, you know, even they've been training like lately in Boulder, but they're from a similar area like Crested Butte with like similar elevation. Yeah. It's like brutally cold, you know, like Tabor went to college for track and cross country, you know, and has some really awesome coaches. And then Eli, same thing, like had a really awesome coach like in his upbringing. And then so I really fell in love with and they were cool with me like still doing what I wanted to do, you know, like they were fine with me still going to ski, you know, but I was just really looking for like a blueprint of really just for the wintertime and in the future, because like it's I've always been like ever since I've been mountain running or trail running, I've kind of created my own little like workout, you know, planning schedule, and I honestly haven't been like the best of it, because I've always wanted like structure in my week when it came to, instead of like spontaneously being like, okay, today's Tuesday, we should run hard, so let's run up as hard as we can up this mountain and then run down, you know. Yeah. So and also like they're just it's a unique situation because, you know, they're still new to the game in a way, but have kind of had some really awesome success, you know? Yeah. So like we were talking about like their early days in the trail running and how like, you know, what their first years were like. And they just had they had a lot of good like knowledge about everything, you know? And
so do they kind of collaboratively coach you like together, or do you work with one of them more closely? I'm just personally curious myself.
Yeah. So they both, they're both just two awesome minds, just kind of like,
that's so interesting.
Creating. Yeah. It's cool having one perspective, you know, but it's even better having two perspectives, you know, and like, and having more reasoning behind, what they're doing. And like, and if I ever have any questions or anything about it, like they're always down to, you know, talk, you know, give me answers. So,
is there anything specific that maybe they've brought into your training recently that you felt like has benefited your running? I mean, it hasn't been that long, and I know it's winter time there, so.
Mm-hmm. I think like just keeping like speed involved in a lot of things. Like the wintertime is interesting because obviously like Crested Butte is far from my ideal place to be training for running, you know, in the wintertime. So like, but if you have like a treadmill and you really can lock in, it's like a perfect time to really just like work on your craft, you know? And so, they've given, you know, we've had some like some speed workouts, some like really, some like, you know, tempo-ish type stuff. And, but mostly just the speed stuff is really kind of, cause that's kind of the one thing that I feel like would have been neglected if I was still running, like coaching myself, because I would have just been skiing and then running like casual 10-piece runs, you know? Yeah. So, so they're really awesome about that. And I'm very stoked about that because I'm pretty much like setting myself up for success. Yeah. You know, once the dry days come. So
are you feeling fit right now, Johen?
Yeah, man. You
look fit.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I was like, I was really stoked about like where I was, especially in the middle of January. And then I kind of got like smacked with some upper respiratory like stuff. So I had some lingering stuff, but like recently I've been really kind of like, you know, seeing the results of kind of just putting in the work over the wintertime, you know, cause it was very hard. Like I have never really run on a treadmill like at all. You know, I've always been like a running outside type situation. And, but I knew if I really wanted to like run consistently, then I had to like, you know, it's been a journey get running on a treadmill because gyms are expensive in Crested Butte, you know, like there's not that many gyms, so like the price is always really high. So like at the beginning of the season, when I was still just trying to save up and like get like race fee money and stuff like that, I was poaching a lot of gyms like around the valley, you know, having homies like open the door or let me in so I could get some training and stuff. So and then it got cold, so I was like, dude, I really have to get a gym. So then I finally, like, once the temps dropped, I've been just kind of consistently on the tread, kind of working on the small things, which is really awesome.
Can't wait to see the hard work pay off this season for you, buddy. I'm so happy for you. I'm so grateful you came on the show to chat about it here. I'm so pumped that Logan and Satisfy had this vision, and I can't wait to continue to blow up your spot here on the podcast and in other places as your number one fan. Joe, and I end all these podcasts with the same closing question for everybody, which is just, who is one person that you admire? Can be inside or outside of sport, living or dead. Why do you admire that person?
Man, honestly, that easily, it's Kobe. You know what I'm saying? Big Kobe Bryant. You know,
Black Mamba,
man. I think because, like, you know, growing up, like, I obviously wasn't. I'm not old enough to experience like the MJ era of him in his reign, you know. But but Kobe was like, it was just super sick. Like, you saw like the work ethic, you know, and he kind of was like what made it cool to like really work hard, you know, and work on your craft. And like, you know, he was a superhero for me when I was like growing up, you know, and yeah, man, it was just really inspiring to kind of see him be like, not the tallest, you know, not the strongest, but he worked his ass off, you know, and it was really awesome to kind of just learn from that, you know, and then really take it into running, obviously, or just other things in general, like working on the craft.
Such a great answer. I was just listening to a podcast. Do you know who Shane Battier is? Do you remember Shane Battier?
Yeah, heck yeah. Is it Miami Heat? He plays Miami Heat?
Yeah. So he was known there. In fact, there was a really great article written about him called the No Stats All-Star. Basically, the philosophy or the message of this article is that Shane Battier was on all these championship teams going back to his time at Duke and his time in the NBA, but he never put up big numbers. But for some reason, he was just part of the winning culture on a bunch of these teams. And he said something about how he used this phrase, the ghosts are coming, something to that effect, to keep him motivated, knowing that, hey, if I don't work hard today, somebody's coming behind me who's going to take my job or be better than me or whatever. And he talks about how when he saw Kobe for the first time, he knew that's the ghost right there. He's just too good. He's so much better than me, and he works harder and he wants it more.
Yeah, so, heck anyway, yeah. And that was great. That was just like, you know, you don't see all the work that's put in behind the scenes, you know, and a lot of people don't see like, you know, the story before the glory, you know. So I mean, it kind of really, he set the tone really for like, you know, putting in work behind the scenes, you know, and like, really just working towards something, you know, with a purpose. So it's like, and always being just a student of everything, you know, which I'm very happy to be. I'm very happy to be a student of like, of the sport, you know, and really just learning more.
Awesome. Well, Johen, you're the man, dude. Thank you for coming on the show to chat all about it. We wish you nothing but good luck. And I feel like that's a perfect sentiment to end the show on, to inspire our audience to go do the work ourselves, right?
Yeah. Keep grinding out there, everyone. You know what I'm saying? I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you.
All right, bro. I'll see you in a few weeks at the Big Alta.
Yeah, man. God bless you, man. It was good seeing you.